Hello everyone, my name is Kinda Vibrant or Damon, and today I have a video for you all that has been a long time coming. As you can tell by the title and the opening card, today I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 best albums of 2017. It was a great year for music across the board, with some of the biggest artists in the world dropping great projects, as well as some sleeper hits from lesser known artists. Before we get to the top 10, I'm going to give you guys some honorable mentions, as well as 5 albums that just barely missed the cut for me. Starting off, I gotta give mention to the albums American Teen by Khalid, Sweet Sexy Savage by Kalani, Good For You by Amine, and The Bigger Artist by A Boogie with the Hoodie. While I enjoyed these albums a lot personally, they just didn't hold up to the rest of the competition when all was said and done, but there are bright futures for these 4 artists, and I have no doubt they'll continue to grow and get better as time goes on. Now for the 5 albums that just missed the cut, we'll start with Boo Boo by Toro y Moi. This was one of those albums that I just happened to stumble upon, but after listening to it, I was mad at myself for not finding it sooner. I was never really one for chill wave before this album, but Chaz Bear really delivered some amazing soundscapes with this project. Next, we have Don't Smile At Me by Billie Eilish. Had this been a full-length project, it certainly would have cracked my top 10, but just because it was an EP doesn't mean it doesn't deserve credit. For a debut project, Billie was poised and sophisticated at every turn through this 9-track project. A personal highlight for me was the Vince Staples feature at the album's end. If you haven't given this project a listen yet, do yourself a favor and go check it out. Next, we have War and Leisure by Miguel. Led by Single Skywalker, this album was equal parts a backdrop for a night of fornication, as well as a summer full of highway cruising, despite the album being released in December. Miguel crooning over these instrumentals with a fire deep down will have you feeling all sorts of ways, and the features here only help strengthen the LA-born artist's 4th studio album. Moving on, we come to Drunk by Thundercat, which was another one of those albums that I just happened to stumble upon, and I came out the other end better for it. It's an album that just needs to be experienced for yourself, because nothing I say will do this album any justice whatsoever. Finally, we have You Only Live Twice by Freddie Gibbs, an album that's very much so a reflection of the last few years for Freddie, as well as a peek into his future. Each bar is delivered with such intent and is packed so heavily that it very much feels like a return to form for Freddie Gibbs, despite a tumultuous couple of years for him. And finally, we move on to the reason you all came, the top 10. This was a list that took me ages to narrow down, but I feel like I finally got it down pat here. Remember, these rankings are just my opinion. If I personally didn't enjoy an album as much as others, I'm not going to rank it higher just because of critical acclaim. Conversely though, if I loved an album that wasn't recognized as one of the year's best, I will not hesitate to put it on this list. If anything though, I just want this to open a discussion. If you disagree, tell me why. If you agree, awesome. Don't be afraid to post your own lists in the comments or tell me how you would switch up mine. So without further ado, at number 10 we have Flower Boy by Tyler, the Creator. Here we had Tyler once again experimenting with his sound in a way that managed to seem different yet really familiar for him. Tyler sounds as comfortable as he's ever been on an album, even when recounting lost connections, broken hearts, and damaged friendships. This is a coming-of-age tale for Tyler, brimming with remorse, while also finding time for Tyler to boast and flex in his typical manner. While there is still boatloads of creativity to be had here, Tyler dialed in his typical chaotic nature a bit to craft a more focused, more tight-sounding project, and he delivered one of the year's best in doing so. At number 9, we have the double album from Mississippi-born rapper Big Crit, Forever Is a Mighty Long Time. On this album, we get more of the bravado we've come to know and love from arguably the most underappreciated rapper in the game. Bass knockers abound though. The first side of this album is a return to form for Krizzle, but it's on the second side of this album that we get a look at Crit's vulnerability as a man. While Crit manages the length of this album well, listening to it cover to cover can be a bit exhaustive if you aren't in the mood. For an album of this quality, that's my only knock against it, and the only thing that keeps this from ranking higher. At number 8, I have the debut album from Canadian R&B singer Daniel Caesar, Freudian. This album is such an intimate and soulful experience backed by angelic vocals from the 22-year-old singer and the featuring artists. With themes of love and faith persisting throughout, it's a wonder this album isn't talked about more. While it's in no way groundbreaking, it should stand out more in a year where so many young artists are auto-tuning themselves and releasing music that are far less engaging than this album. Nevertheless, it made its mark with me, and that's why I ranked it here at number 8. Next up, the number 7 spot is home to All American Badass by Brooklyn's own Joey Badass. This is an album that, despite being released earlier in the year, had me coming back again and again. It's a heavy album, packed with messages about oppression, police brutality, and overcoming obstacles. Joey uses the 12-track LP to once again showcase his lyrical maturity, providing hope for his listeners while warning them of a dark future if changes aren't made soon in our society. The only knock against this album for me is that at times it can feel a bit overwhelming. Joey throws so much at us, yet sometimes forget to offer solutions for how or why we should change. All in all, though, it is a strong album and does provide Joey with an outline for what he can do with his next attempt to make an even stronger album. Moving on, we have Vince Staples' Big Fish Theory at number 6. This album is Vince Staples telling the world that he doesn't fit in any boxes, that he won't play to his critics. This is Vince Staples at his best, expanding his sound and introducing a futuristic, breakneck pacing that strays away from his more methodical and careful releases in the past. It's a smooth listen beginning to end despite the tempo, and one that is just as welcome in a club as it is in your car as you sit in your driveway listening to it at 3 a.m. At the number 5 spot, and I can already see this being a point of contention, we have 444 by Jay-Z. Now, let me just say that I really enjoyed this album more than I thought I would. Upon its announcement, I lambasted it and dismissed it as just another flop in the same vein as Magna Carta Holy Grail, and yet when it came out, curiosity drove me to purchase a copy, yes, a physical copy, a CD, and give it a listen. I was far from disappointed. I was actually touched by the way Jay peeled back the curtain and allowed us to get a glimpse into his life, his infidelity, his shortcomings as a father and as a partner. His life is Sean Carter. It's the album that Jay has wanted to make for years, and he made it. Maybe in any other year it cracks the top 3 for me. It just unfortunately did not this year. Still a fantastic album though. At number 4, we have Process by Sampha, a remarkable album that sounds nothing like a debut LP should. Sampha navigates the 12-track LP with such grace that it makes it hard to believe this was his first commercial release. It's a heavy album, one that personally carried me through the hardest few months of my life. Despite my personal attachment to Process, though, it's easy to see this album for what it is, a near masterpiece. Sampha uses this blank canvas to create stories, to paint pictures, and to use his voice as a vehicle to explore his life. No One Knows Me Like the Piano is a song that could make even the most removed and dispassionate person feel, and that's what Sampha aims to do with this project, make you feel. He doesn't rely on traditional songwriting to do so. He himself has said his lyrics aren't meant to be sensical. Rather, he writes things like a movie, his words. It's easy to feel and hear that throughout, and his masterful execution helped him land on this spot. Finally, we make it to the top 3. For me, this was the hardest part of writing this list. Trying to place my 3 favorite projects in order was painstaking, but I think I did it, and I did it right. So at number 3, I have Control by my girl SZA. For an album that seemed for so long like it may never see the light of day, and one that SZA herself has said she was worried about putting it out, the TDE stalwart hit this one out of the park. This record explores many themes that are touched on regularly in today's music: love, loneliness, self-assurance, infidelity, yet SZA makes sure she stands out. She bears her soul, her imperfections over the course of this record, relying on instrumentals and sounds that aren't always common in today's R&B landscape. This, coupled with her vocal command, provide listeners with a 50-minute ride through SZA's life. It's a ride that is easy for somebody to relate to, who hasn't been hurt by love or hurt somebody they love. At number 2, we have an album, or 3 in this case, from a group of young artists that took the world by storm in 2017. I am of course talking about the Saturation Trilogy by Brockhampton, specifically in this case Saturation 3. Now, I could have easily copped out and included all 3 Saturation entries here in the top 5, because they're all amazing, but I decided to condense it down and single out my personal favorite Brockhampton project. The creativity that this collective employs when taken to the airwaves is unmatched. While some will draw comparisons to Odd Future, it's immediately apparent that Brockhampton is a much more cohesive unit. Never before have we seen a group of artists do this kind of thing. They've released not 1, not 2, but 3 full-length projects in a matter of months that all stand on their own and offer a different experience despite the consistent sounds and similar themes. Each member of America's favorite boy band all stand out on their own and bring something different and unique to the table. Whether we're talking about Joba's maniacal bars, Merlin Wood's often tone-deaf yet roof-raising and funny lines, or Kevin Abstract's earworm hooks, there is so much depth and flexibility in these tracks. Saturation 3 specifically may be the group's most poppy endeavor yet, but it's also their most bold and yet clear in terms of goals. They want to occupy a space that sounds familiar but is so inherently different that you can't help but tune in to listen to what they have to say. Whatever they decide to do in 2018 and beyond remains to be seen, but it's safe to say they made their mark on music in 2017 with the Saturation Trilogy. And finally, we arrive at the number 1 spot, the best album of 2017. What album do I think was better than the rest, that stood atop and made its name? Of course, it's simple. Lil Pump by Lil Pump. What else would you... Oh, wait. No, I can't. That's not... No, it's not right. What the hell? Of course I have to consider Kendrick Lamar's Damn as this year's best album. How could you not? Kung Fu Kenny once again reinvented his sound with his latest LP and proved that he sits alone atop the rap throne. In a year where Drake played it safe in releasing a playlist of dancehall and grime-inspired tunes, and J. Cole was still riding the waves made by his 2016 album For Your Eyes Only, King Kendrick turned the dial all the way to 12 and delivered his most aggressive project yet in Damn. He once more flexed his masterful storytelling, and instead of playing it safe after the masterful To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick delivered his most diverse-sounding album while saving his biggest lyrical twist for last. Literally, the last track on Damn is the culmination of years of storytelling for Kendrick Lamar. This album is one of those that you need to hear for yourself to experience, and even then it will take you multiple listens to dissect this intricately weaved together masterpiece. And that brings us to the end of today's video, my favorite albums of the year. If you made it this far, I thank you guys very much for watching. I would hope you would consider subscribing to my channel if you enjoy this kind of content. A like on the video would also go a very long way in telling me that you guys enjoy this type of content as it is. And of course, I would love to see your comments down below with your favorite albums of the year. So once again, thank you guys very much, and I will see you soon in my next